One of the biggest lies in the world is that God allows you to suffer. You may look at other people who seem to have it easy and say, why me? Why is my life so full of struggle and suffering? During my spiritual journey, there was a few times where I almost gave up. I would get infuriated at the fact that it was so difficult for me to experience even a drop of positive emotion. These were during transitionary phases through what I call purgatory. What happens on the spiritual journey is that you feel like you have to sacrifice so much. You feel you need to give up all of these worldly desires because you're supposedly on this higher path where people say there are these great rewards waiting for you. And yet you might not have anything to show for these sacrifices. You might not have any success in the world, nor any inner spiritual success. And so you get bitter. For me, there was resentment because I saw other people with success or with money or with the things that I desired. And you experience a bit of FOMO, fear of missing out. You ask God, why am I going through all of this nonsense? Can't I just get what I want, please? Why the struggle? Why all the suffering? What is the point of this? Why can't you just save me from my suffering? One day during my dark night of the soul, I remember I was laying down in bed, and I prayed to God to save me from my suffering. I was desperate and in great pain. After I finished the prayer, I felt like this kind of relief of pressure from my chest. Almost like I hadn't noticed that there was a hand on my chest, and I had felt the hand be removed. Immediately, the thought arose in my mind that, oh, this was God letting me go. God was not coming to save me. I was headed straight off a cliff, and God wasn't going to stop me. And so I fell. I broke all of my bones on the jagged rocks down below, and I just laid there in suffering for a long time. You see, God has the infinite power to do anything at any moment with no effort whatsoever. We think that God should just save us from our suffering, but God could end all of the suffering in the whole universe in an instant. And we might say, well, why wouldn't God do this? Come on. Doesn't God know about the starving children and all the deadly diseases and the natural disasters? Why doesn't God do anything about this? You see, we believe that we could create a better world if this kind of suffering just didn't exist. But we would be wrong, because it is precisely this suffering that gives meaning to life. As Marilyn Manson once said, without the threat of death, there is no reason to live at all. But this is besides the point. If God just instantly solved all your problems for you, that would be a cruel and unjust God. If God took away all of your suffering, that would not be a good God. Because by doing something for somebody else that they are completely capable of doing on their own, you steal their soul. You steal their purpose and meaning of their life. I learned this from Jordan Peterson when he said,
if you're too compassionate towards your kids, then you do everything for them. And if you do everything for them, then they grow up useless and they never leave and they hate you and they hate everything else too. It's a bad idea. And so you use compassion judiciously. There's a rule if you're working in a place like a nursing home. And the rule is, it's a harsh rule, do not do anything for the people that you're taking care of that they can do for themselves. And so if they have to struggle to feed themselves, you don't bloody well intervene and feed them. You let them maintain their damn independence. And you have to be a hard-hearted bastard to do that. To watch someone struggle like that, but you're furthering their medium to long-term independence and development, and you do the same thing with your children. Treating your children like they're endless permanent victims is a very bad idea.
If God would have saved me from my suffering, it would have only made me weak. To get where I am now, I probably would have never agreed to go through so much suffering. I'm sure you'd agree that even if you know that suffering is good for you, you still don't want to go through it. And yet, at the same time, it is precisely that suffering that molded me into the greatest, most powerful version of myself. Because we live in these animal bodies, we're always pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain. But the highest truth is that the darkness and the light are equally important for the wholeness of all things. You cannot have life without death, and with death comes suffering. And so if you want to get rid of suffering, you also have to get rid of life itself. When we are going through times of great suffering, be wary of the tricks that your mind plays on you. It will judge your life against others and say that you got a bad deal, when in fact, it is those who always get what they want who have the worst deal possible. We don't always know what's good for us. Sometimes not getting what you want is the best thing that can ever happen to you. But more often than not, we're just being impatient. It's not that we can't have what we want. It's just that we can't have it right now. You see, it is precisely our own mind that leads us to and keeps us stuck in suffering. Our mind creates the illusion of separation. And hell is synonymous with separation, while heaven is synonymous with union. Separation from and union with God. You see, God does not allow suffering. God allows us to make the choices that create suffering. God does not punish us. We punish ourselves by engaging in the actions that separate us from God. But what about the innocent? What say you about them? I say, you must come to know the rules of this game called life, my friend. That is, the innocent are the wager. They are the price we pay for our evil deeds.